All right, wonderful. So all of you now know the various means by which to get your CSS to not block rendering. And if you'll remember, auto-optimize automatically adds what we were calling the defer attribute right there to your script that it concatenates into a single JavaScript file. So for those of you who straight out of the gate didn't have any problems and were able to combine all of your JavaScript into that single file without any problems, you're good to go. You're no longer, your JavaScript is no longer blocking rendering. But is that attribute, that defer attribute, is that really the best we can do? And the answer to that is yes and no, but let's concentrate on the no so that we can improve upon it. And the reason being is the subtle difference between that defer attribute and this async attribute. Remember we talked about you got a primer on asynchronous resources. And the difference between this defer attribute that is put on the script tag and the async attribute is a subtle one. When you're deferring your JavaScript, that JavaScript is not applied by the browser until until the page is rendered, until all of the HTML is rendered. So it's deferred, definitively deferred. It waits. The browser will encounter it and process it, but will not apply until everything else is rendered. Therefore, the JavaScript is no longer blocking rendering. The difference between defer and async is that async will apply this JavaScript file whenever it is ready, whenever the browser has completed its analysis or parsing of that file. It will apply it at that point. So for example, let's say your page, you have just the defer attribute on your script tag. So what that means is if your HTML renders in, let's say 400 milliseconds, we'll toss a number out there, that means that the JavaScript will not be applied until after that amount of time. Whereas with the async attribute, let's say that the browser has encountered this JavaScript file, it will parse or load that file whenever it has completed its analysis of it. So let's say, again, it takes 400 milliseconds for the HTML to be parsed. However, the JavaScript file with the async attribute attached to it is ready in 100 milliseconds. Well, it'll go ahead and apply it at that time. Remember in the primer we talked about it loads it essentially in the background, and then whenever it's ready, it will apply it in the foreground. So there's that difference between the two. And then there is the fact that some browsers do not recognize async but recognize defer. Some browsers recognize both, but some browsers perform better with the async attribute than they do defer. So how do we handle all this? How do we get the best of all possible worlds? Well, you can see that we've actually done that here on wpfaster.org. We have both the defer and async attributes. So to what extent does this even make a difference in some browsers by getting both the defer and async attributes on our script? Well, it makes a pretty profound difference. And what I've done here is run a couple of different tests using webpagetest.org to visualize this for you. And the primary impact it has on certain sites and certain setups, again, you're going to want to test this, test, is that it moves, remember our DOM content loaded event, our document object model content loaded event is represented by this pinkish color here. As you can see, this particular test was done with just the defer attribute attached to the script. And you can see that it's right around 2.4 seconds. Remember, we want all of these lines over here as far as we can get them. We want start render as represented by this green line, the first paint, what the browser reports as the first pixels being painted on the page, all the way over here as far as we can get them. We want DOM content loaded over this way too. So so again, this test was run with just the defer attribute. Can we improve upon this? Well, we can. At least this was tested using the latest version of Chrome. So what does it look like if we add the async attribute onto that script tag in addition to the defer attribute? This is what it looks like. It brings that DOM content loaded event all the way in, improving it by over a full second, almost a second and a half actually. So let me illustrate this again. Defer attribute, DOM content loaded event, async attribute, DOM content loaded event. That's what we want. These lines, all of these lines representing the metrics that they do. First paint, start render, DOM content, and even document complete and the onload. We want these over here as far as we can get them, as close to instantaneous rendering as we can get, because that's what our users expect. The closer we can get to that, then the closer we are to a user's expectation of instantaneous gratification. So by adding this async attribute in addition to the defer attribute on the script tag that is produced by AutoOptimize, we're in essence giving the browser the choice of what to choose or what it can even read. So we have the best of all possible worlds there when it comes to deferring and or asyncing our JavaScript. So how to get this done, right? Well, you need a code snippet to do this, and I will be providing that for you in the addendum to this section, along with a bunch of other cool snippets that you can use to alter the functionality, enhance the functionality of AutoOptimize. And you would need to add this snippet to your themes functions.php file, or you would need to use a plugin such as Code Snippets, and that's already been provided to you, but I will again provide it, a link to that plugin in the addendum to this section. So this is our themes functions.php file, and here is that filter we are applying to AutoOptimize that will give us both the defer and async attribute. If for those of you who are finding yourselves having to load your JavaScript in the head, that filter, that code snippet will load that JavaScript in the head asynchronously. It will not attach the defer flag. It will just attach the async flag. So there you have it with respect to having the best of all possible worlds as regards deferring or getting your JavaScript rather to render as non-blocking. And it's as easy as that.